Hello everyone, this is Space Café Podcast, and I'm Markus. What happens when an Austrian decides to weave her life into the fabric of one of the world's tiniest nations? Join us as we explore Liechtenstein through the eyes of Bianca Lins, not a native but a believer in the cosmic destiny of this dot on the map, literally a dot on a global map. We're about to share a narrative that defies the gravitational pull of size and geography. Bianca's story is one for the books. Picture growing up with the Austrian Alps as your playground, only to find yourself in a nation where the stars seem just a touch closer. Liechtenstein might be snugly tucked away, but did you know it played a role in the clarity of vision for the Apollo 11 astronauts? That's right, those helmet visors were made possible with a little help from Bianca's adopted home. And the plot thickens. Beyond its lunar contributions, Liechtenstein is busy drafting the future. Yes, we're talking space laws. With Bianca's unique perspective, dive into how this minuscule powerhouse is navigating global satellite frequencies and the nuances of extraterrestrial real estate. Bianca is not your typical space buff. Her journey from Austria to becoming an integral part of Liechtenstein's stride towards the stars is nothing short of fascinating. It's a story of adaptation, belonging, and proof that ambition knows no boundaries, terrestrial or otherwise. So pour yourself a generous cup of cosmic brew and make yourselves comfortable. We're embarking on a journey that stitches together the quaint charm of Liechtenstein with the infinite canvas of space, all through the lens of Bianca Lins. Expect a conversation peppered with laughter, awe, and maybe a revelation or two, served up in the unique Space Café Podcast style. Prepare to be enchanted, my friends, by a tale that reminds us all, in the grand scheme of the cosmos, it's the size of your dream that counts. Let's go. For people who do not know Liechtenstein, what would be the first thing that describes that beautiful country?
Well, Liechtenstein is indeed a very beautiful country. In the middle of Europe, we have beautiful mountains. It's very small. As I said, I think it's by size the sixth smallest country in the world. We have about 160 square kilometers in total and about 40,000 people living there. We're famous, I think, for our royal family, which brings a lot of tourists coming to visit Liechtenstein. But Liechtenstein is also, I think, very famous for its prosperous industry and also the financial market.
Tell me, how long does it take from one border to the other, by bike or by car?
Okay, I think by car maybe 30 minutes or something.
30 minutes?
If you drive, through all the villages, maybe a little bit longer, depending on traffic.
Fantastic. And now the interesting part now is that super small country is super big in all things space. So does Liechtenstein have its own space program, maybe launch sites or whatnot?
Well, we are becoming bigger in the space sector. Let's take it that way. No, we actually are more active in space than one might think. Actually, the history of space of Liechtenstein started already very early in 1969 with the Apollo 11 mission. I think most people do not know that a Liechtenstein company, in fact, provided the coating for the helmets of the astronauts.
Interesting.
And that's why Liechtenstein is the only country outside of the US that has moon sound from this Apollo 11 mission in our country.
Fantastic.
And two Liechtenstein flags that have been already on the moon.
Fantastic.
So that is when it started, and there were some smaller projects during this time. Liechtenstein has ratified 2 of the 5 space treaties, the Liability Convention and also the Registration Convention. And a few years ago, well, actually 10 years ago now, in 2014, a consortium of Liechtenstein and German companies asked to file some satellite frequencies for a satellite constellation, which we did. And I think this is a project that most people in the sector have already heard of. It's now Revada Space Networks. And this is actually running then with Liechtenstein frequencies. And due to this project, we became aware of the fact that it, with all this commercialization in the space sector, it would be good to have a space law, a national space law. And that's what we did. It came into force on the 1st of January, our space law, together with the space ordinance. So we have now a national legal framework. If somebody wants to conduct space activities out from Liechtenstein, then we have a legal regime for that.
It's still mind-blowing because, again, a country where it takes like a couple of minutes to go from A to B, from one border to the other, and at the same time you have your own space law, and you're sort of on the negotiating table on when it comes to international agreements. So that is truly fascinating, and it's at the same time empowering because I'm right here. I'm in Austria, a small country also. So that means that not only the big ones, the big countries, but also the small countries can, if they want, have a say in international diplomacy and policy making. Is that right?
Absolutely, yes. And I mean, that's the great thing. The great thing about international law or being on this international platform, because it doesn't matter how big your country is, which size, you always have the same voice. If you are participating in any international meetings from the UN, for example, then Liechtenstein has always the same voice, like, for example, the US or China. It's one voice.
So can you give us a little bit of an overview when it comes to space law? We do have an agreement from 1967, right?
Actually, we didn't ratify the Outer Space Treaty. But of course, the Declaration of Principles is now, commonly acknowledged for all countries, I think. So, of course, these requirements also hold true for us. But in fact, not all countries have ratified all the 5 space treaties. Some even like China, I think it was not so long ago, did was it China with the moon agreement that they withdraw again. And at the same time, as I said, there is happening so much now in space. When the space treaties were written and coming into force, it was just nations that had enough money to have their own space program, and that these countries went up to space. And the other countries were, well, of course, participating in the discussions, but not really active in space. So today we see, as I said before, such a big commercialization. It's mainly the private companies that are now active in space. And of course, working together with governments and everything. But the main players are not the governments anymore. It's companies like Elon Musk, with Starlink and so. If you, for example, look at the International Space Station, it will retire in 2030 or 2032. And the next space stations that will come are actually coming from private companies. Of course, states will work together with them, but that puts us in a completely different situation because you have to now find a solution that you're not just a customer asking for, access to the space station. And with things like, for example, the moon, when you think about all the resources that were already found on the moon and that are thought to be there too, or with asteroids and things like this, and then also, using the moon as a platform to further go then to Mars. And so the agreements we have now, these international agreements, do not really cover this situation, I think. Yeah. So I think it would be necessary to find a way to, on an international basis, to modernize these agreements. And one step towards this is, for example, the Artemis Accords, where I think it was 7 states, the US, Canada, Uruguay, and so on, which try to, of course, stay within this international frame that we have now with the 5 space treaties, but to go a step further and say, okay, the situation has changed a little bit now. So how can we ensure, for example, that when we are on the moon and are mining resources, it shouldn't be the Wild West. So we have these obligations that nobody can go to the moon and say, okay, this is now a part of my country. This is a part of my state. It's mine. It belongs to all humankind. And these things still have to be obliged to. Or, for example, things like indigenous folks, like from Canada or from Australia, they have a different connection to the moon, for example. So it's important for them that the surface of the moon stays the same. So if we go there and mine there, we have to ensure not to change the surface or damage the surface to, take care of these indigenous
needs.
Sorry?
Needs, of course. And
yes, yeah, absolutely. And these are things that I think are not really covered today in these old or traditional space treaties. And this is something I think we have to look into. And that is something, of course, you can only achieve with international cooperation. I know it's a difficult geopolitical situation currently, but at the end of the day, it will be important to find together solutions and modernize these treaties.
It seems like, as you just mentioned, the geopolitics as opposed to technological progress. And so what we're seeing is rapid advancements in technology and Starship 3, 4, 5, 6 coming up now. And at some point, those massive transporters will be ready and available to bring massive payloads into orbit and to the moon and whatnot. And the question is, do we have time to make up our minds as policymakers the way we've been doing that for decades now? Or, as you suggested, do we need something completely new, not only a completely new framework, but a completely new decision-making process? Where do you see the main hurdles at the moment when it comes to decision-making?
Well, I don't think that we need a completely new framework. I think it has to be updated. I think the only platform we have today, and this still keeps to be true, is UNOSA and COPUS, because this is an established platform where space experts come together to discuss these issues. And of course, there's also tension, and it's difficult in this geopolitical situation. But I don't think that saying now, okay, we who knows, it doesn't work. We have to find something new. That's not the way. Yeah. It's established. It works. It takes maybe sometimes longer. That's why I actually welcome this initiative with the Artemis Accords, because like-minded countries, and maybe not even always like-minded countries, have found their ways together to sign these Artemis Accords and say, okay, we discuss on a different platform new solutions, how we could, solve this and that problem. And then we go together as now, I think 37 states, maybe then in a few years, even more states here. We go together as a collective and present this to COPOS and discuss it there. And, this is a different thing or approach, I think, than if it's just like one or two or three countries. If they have already a kind of a solution to present. It's like maybe a working group, but on a different level.
I attended the World Space Forum before Christmas at UNOSA, and there was one moment where the representative of Indonesia, she called to question the primary language of decision making, because she said that in Indonesia, not many people understand or speak English as the lingua franca in all of this. So she questioned a very basic requirement, and that is, how do we speak with one another? I was surprised by something like this, because I figured, shouldn't there, amongst United Nations bodies, be well-established frameworks and guardrails that are in place already and that no one needs to question anymore, so that there is enough time to take care of the actual question that is being up for debate? Being for the first time at World Space Forum, I was surprised that such basic questions are not even solved yet.
I think these questions are solved. I mean, they have been solved for decades now. It was always clear there are these 5 languages we use on an UN level, and it works. And of course, you could argue now that nowadays, more people talk, I don't know, Hindu or something like that. But it works. And of course, why do so many people speak English? Even if they don't speak French and they don't speak Chinese also. But English is, I think, the most easiest language. And almost, so many people speak English. So to change that to something like, I don't know, Hindu, for example, or Portuguese, also, I think that would be quite difficult because it's a much more difficult language. So English is established as a world language. Most of the people, of course, not everybody, but especially when you're in this working in international surrounding, then everybody talks English. So it's surprising that that the state comes up with such a question. Because I mean, as you said, there's other problems that need really our attention. So to start like completely from scratch, discussing the basics, like, in which language should we talk to each other? I mean, this is really far beyond what is on the plate now.
What do you see as the main challenges these days, other than geopolitics?
Well, from a space perspective, of course, how to solve the space debris problem. I mean, this is maybe one of the biggest challenges we will face in the next few years, because there are thousands of filings coming out, including, of course, the launch of thousands of satellites. So this will be a huge challenge.
Is it true? I heard that it keeps escaping me. Some African country licensed, 30,000 satellites or 300,000 or what? Is that true?
That was a crazy number. Yes. I'm not quite sure. So I hope my colleagues from Rwanda don't mind if I say, but I think it was Rwanda, wasn't it?
I can't remember, but it was a crazy number. Yeah.
Yes. Really, really a huge number. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and this is just one country. So they're coming really thousands of satellites and thousands of filings. So this brings so many other problems, not just space debris, but also, of course, the dark sky. Yeah. If we, have so many satellites that we can't really observe anymore what is coming from space, maybe towards the Earth. Yeah, this could bring completely different problems now. So I think this is one of the biggest challenges. Another challenge, of course, is also with AI. I think this will be, it's a game changer when it comes also to space activities and space exploration. It's a great benefit, of course, for planning missions or for designing spacecrafts, and of course for processing huge amounts of space of satellite data. Yeah, but at the same time, it's also, I'm not quite sure, and of course it's always my legal partner. I'm not quite sure if our legal frameworks are really prepared already for this. Because, for example, when you look at the Liability Convention, the Liability Convention talks about physical damage, but does not really cover damages made by, for example, a cyber attack and data loss, which could, of course, easier occur with AI. So I think these developments will be the biggest challenges in the near future.
I was being very imprecise when I asked you what you see as the major current challenges, and I'm glad that we could already now talk about this. But what I really wanted to ask you before that was, what do you see as the major challenges when it comes to decision making?
Oh, okay, I see. But you said except geopolitics.
Yeah.
So, but I think that is the really the biggest challenge to get states to agree and to find compromises, not just for their own sake, but really for the bigger benefit, for the bigger good. So,
is there a willingness, above all, to find a conclusion, to find a solution? So what's the chemistry between the lines?
Well, I think
of course it depends on the countries, but in general, like across the board, do you think it's more positive, more solution oriented, or is it gridlock at the moment? Very difficult.
It really depends on the countries, to be honest. I mean, of course, there is a group of countries that is very like-minded and tries to find a solution and an agreement. And then there is another group that is like-minded, which, has a different opinion, yeah? But sees it the same way. Okay, we're working together. We want to find a compromise, but this doesn't go together with the idea you are having. Yeah? So I think it's more difficult than it has been, I don't know, 10, 20, or maybe 20, 30 years ago. But yeah, the global developments, I think, show to all of us that to really achieve, big decisions on an international level that all countries more than less agree to find a consensus is currently really difficult.
What is the most pressing issue on the table?
Well, I think the most pressing issue, of course, is the climate crisis. It's, of course, also how we would further go on with the situation we have with Russia and the Ukraine, but also other states, with North Korea, China, of course. These are things that have been very quiet, like 20 years ago when you look at the 1990s and early 2000s. one could have had the impression that everybody wants to work together and everybody is happy, that this Cold War is over and the wall is gone and everything. But the shift we are seeing in the past 10, 15 years is quite concerning.
I spoke with the former director of the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs 2 years ago. We had him on the show, and he told me that despite all the issues that we have on a global scale, on a diplomatic level, it's a different story. And that different story on the diplomatic level is that there's a willingness to cooperate, and there's still handshake quality, so that countries that on the public stage, opponents wouldn't talk to one another, on the diplomatic level would have open lines of communication. Is that true still?
This is true. This is also what we are experiencing, or me personally am experiencing. I am in the advisory committee of 2 international satellite organizations, ITSO and Eutelsat. Of course, Eutelsat is much smaller, but with ITSO, I'm actually the current chair of the advisory committee. And it is really, like you described, on a diplomatic level. Of course, we're not always agreeing on everything, but there is respect, and there is the possibility to discuss and to shake hands. Absolutely.
Wonderful. So let's curve back to Liechtenstein. How did you end up in all of this? You're not
an interesting question.
You're not originally from Liechtenstein, right?
No, I'm from Austria, like you are. I was born and grew up in Styria. That's the more eastern part of Austria, in a very small village, in a working class family. So it was not quite a given to go to the university. And it actually took me much longer to come to the university. I quit school when I was 16 to start working and make my own money. And
you were an early rebel already.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I mean, my parents got divorced when I was 14. And, well, it was a little bit of a difficult time, to be honest, because my mother tried to make somehow a living for us. And for me, it was just to, maybe also contribute, but make my own money and get out of this. And since there was no really role model in my family, so I was the first one in my family to go to university and finish university and make a PhD and so. So it was more, how can I say? It was more common in my family, to just start working. And that's what I did. So I started working in an office for a tire company. They produced tires. And when I was 22, I moved to Vienna with my sister and her little daughter, and was working then for an IT company and in the financial market sector and for an investment fund company. But the thing always was that, well, maybe I have to go back a few steps. So my very first profession that I wanted to have was to become an astronaut.
Of course. Now we got the space thing going. Okay, I'm glad about this.
But my parents said, well, I'm so short-sighted. I have glasses, or now I'm wearing contact lenses. They said, well, with eyes like this, unfortunately, you're never going to be an astronaut.
Wow.
So
that's very discouraging.
Yes, but it was the time, I mean, that was in the early 80s.
Okay.
For somebody from such a small country, from such a small village, my parents could have never imagined what I'm doing now, actually. So, anyway, my second dream was then to become a lawyer, to study law. And I actually started because I thought all lawyers know all laws by heart. Because, when you watch a movie or a series, so they were always, citing
paragraphs,
his legal requirements and paragraphs. So I started actually learning the Austrian private law.
Wow.
which was really, really hard because it was like written in 1812.
You started to memorize it.
Yeah, I tried at least.
No.
I was not very successful with it. Nevertheless, I thought, okay, if I start now, then I'm going to be finished with my law studies earlier, of course. So, but then the divorce happened and everything changed. Nevertheless, this dream of studying law always persisted. So in 2011, I was already a mother of two boys at this time. I finished my high school diploma and started to study law at the University of Linz. They have a very good, they call it multimedia studies. So you can basically learn at home. You can watch videos. They have live videos and live lessons. And that's what I did. And when I finished, shortly before I finished my first diploma, I got a job offer from the University of Liechtenstein and started working there. And when I was finished, I got an offer to stay there and to do my PhD, which I did. And after 4 years at the university, I was offered a job at the Office for Communications. And that's how I ended up where I am. And when I was working actually for the University of Liechtenstein, I was focusing my research work on digitalization, notably also cybersecurity. And that was also, the kind of door opener for my switch to the Office for Communications. And when I started, then we got this project to write the Space Act. Actually, my colleague, Markus, he had the project lead in this, and we did it. So him and me and an external expert, I'm sure you know, Professor Ingrid Marbo, helped us with our space law. And because I always had this interest in these things, it was quite easy to, jump right into space and
fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So how about being an astronaut? I hear that things are getting ever more ever easier to go into space. So maybe even with prescription glasses, you can still go. So would you still go?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm still not too old to become an ESA astronaut. So who knows? That was maybe the next round I will apply.
Exactly. There was a draft last year, or was it 2 years ago?
I think it's 2 years ago, but unfortunately, so far they don't really need lawyers up there.
Interesting.
So they should have, kind of maybe medical or technical background, something like that. But the legal background is not quite what they were looking for.
Not yet. But I mean, like once they have like dozens and hundreds or thousands of people up there, I think the requirement to have a lawyer up there by your side will be reality. Because
would you go?
I would.
Would you go to space?
I would totally love to go. I think I have a little bit of adventure blood circulating in my body. So I love to do crazy things. I think I would love to go. Maybe not for good. So I think going to Mars would be really cool, but I would want to come back. Not least because I want to see my family and be near my family. But I would love to go for a while, maybe for half a year or a year. I think I could negotiate that. A year would be fine.
Yeah, I agree. That would be good.
Yeah. You mentioned cybersecurity. Is this a thing currently in space also?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think it latest with the Viasat cyber attack 2 years ago when Russia invaded the Ukraine, it became, apparent to all stakeholders and people working in space that it's also necessary to protect their space assets and to protect the satellites. It's becoming, I think, more and more recognized everybody's working on this because, like years ago, it was very expensive to go to space and to build satellites and everything. So everybody was like, okay, maybe we can save a little bit money there because who should attack a satellite, and nobody would want it. So it's not so important. Yeah. But nowadays it's of course much cheaper now to launch a satellite or to launch any space object. Yeah? And the reality is, of course, that it's very vulnerable. Yeah? So it's hugely important to protect these assets, to also include cybersecurity in your space strategy. We are, in fact, I think, the first country to have cybersecurity requirements in our law. So if you want to conduct a space activity from Liechtenstein, you also have to show what your cybersecurity strategy is.
So what could that be? I mean, like, would I need to demonstrate that I'm employing firewalls around my spacecraft, my satellite, or what does that mean?
Well, you need a risk-based concept and include detailed description, processes, mechanisms, methods to ensure the cybersecurity of your space activity. For example, how you protect against unauthorized access to critical functions of the space object. For example, for command, control, and telemetry connections. You also have to provide information on the physical protection, aimed to reducing vulnerabilities, again, of command and control and telemetry receiving systems. You have to protect against communication disruptions and deceptions. You have to protect the ground stations, the operating technology. You need cybersecurity hygiene measures, physical security for automated information systems, methods for detecting intruders for systems elements. And of course also how you manage supply chain risks. That is also an important fact.
Is that mandatory?
With our law it is.
Yes.
But yes, that's mandatory.
How about deorbiting technologies? Of course, I'm talking now about space debris because I find that super interesting that there is like mandatory cybersecurity in place, but still we have that trash up there floating around in space. So why can't we have the same tough rules also for trash in space?
We do.
So Liechtenstein also has those rules.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We also have requirements regarding the preservation of the long-term usability of space and the prevention of space debris. And there it's the same, that you have to provide us information on how you are planning to prevent space debris, how you are planning to move forward with your space object, once it's end of life, how you're going to deorbit it, and what are you going to do if, for example, for example, how you could make the controlled re-entry for the space object. And if you, for example, have a non-maneuverable space object, you have to choose an orbit that it doesn't stay longer up there than 25 years. And there, of course, there's a reference to the Interagency Debris Coordination Committee. There are some guidelines, and according to these guidelines, you have to provide this information.
Is this a deterrent or to potential clients? Because if I had my own satellite fleet, constellation or whatnot, I wanted to bring up into orbit, I would need a country to partner up with, or I don't know what the proper terminology would be. So if I opted for Liechtenstein, I would then need to comply with all those rules. So is that a deterrent to potential clients because other countries don't have it so strict, and maybe have it cheaper? Or is the Liechtensteinian model also attractive for some partners? So why would I go to Liechtenstein if I could go somewhere else and not need all those things?
I love this question, really. Thank you very much for this question. No, because in fact, that was already discussed a lot also in Liechtenstein. Yeah? I mean, you could say that it is a very strict law, but at the same time, I mean, if you want to be a responsible space actor, then I would look for a country with a legal framework that gives me legal certainty. And I mean, this, what it is stated in the law and in the ordinance, this is what you get and this is what you have to do. There are no hidden requirements. There is no, I don't know, guideline or something like that what we pull out of the drawer. This is exactly what we need. And of course, if you can, I don't know, for example, for our insurance obligations, if you can provide proof that your space activity requires only a lower amount of insurance coverage, then it's fine for us too. But I think it's difficult, or if I would have a space company and I would want to conduct in space activities, I would look for a country that has a sophisticated legal framework and not a country where it might be cheaper. But what if things change? What if they come up with a space law and so suddenly there are requirements that I can't fulfill because I never planned to fulfill them because they were just not there at the time. So in times like this where everybody's talking about space debris, for example, and things like this, I would want to have a partner on my side that gives me a very clear framework.
It's really interesting because we see sustainability and green strategies across the board with so many different industries. Even in my industry, the media industry, I'm also a filmmaker. So we are imposing very rigid green structures upon ourselves. We know it makes things a lot more expensive, but at the same time, we know we have to do it in order to be sustainable for the planet and sustainable for society and whatnot. So it's a tough question to ask oneself, but at the same time, I think it's a necessity that in turn can also be marketed in the future. Yes. So I find it interesting that this dynamic is also part of what is going on in your world, that it's sort of a pre-investment for something in the future, that it's an ethical question we all need to ask ourselves. Yes. I think this is what it's all about.
Absolutely.
Is there something like space ethics, by the way? In your world?
That I'm aware of. In my world, you said?
Yes.
Well, space ethics, I mean, there is this true belief that we cannot also do the same to space, to our next orbits, like we did here on Earth, and create such, like the climate crisis. And I think time is to act now. In fact, to prevent these things. So space ethics, you can call it like this. But I think if you want to be a responsible player and, not just think on the short term and just on your own benefit, then I think these are the things you have to do.
Do you see like a growing interest? Of course, you have to speak for Liechtenstein now. I totally understand that. But do you see like a growing interest in what your country is offering?
I think so, yes. Well, we also, of course, try. I mean, I think for a lot of people and companies and countries, Liechtenstein is not really on the map. And if you meet somebody also on the international platform, then it's also, Liechtenstein. I've never met somebody from Liechtenstein. So
it's you.
With, yeah, exactly. We really exist. But what we're trying to do now is to bring this topic, bring space more to Liechtenstein, to bring it more to our industry and to our financial sectors, and grow the awareness that what is going on there, that it's not just for big states, but also for Liechtenstein, an interesting sector from various perspectives, and also to promote Liechtenstein a little bit, our possibilities. I mean, of course, we are a small country, but being a small country also has a lot of benefits. We have, so to say, very short ways. So, in fact, I mean, it's a little bit over-exaggerating, but kind of everybody knows everybody. So if you need something, it's very very quick that we can, our ways are short, we can call and we know each other. And if you have an application, for example, then it doesn't take you months and years or something like that. But
and it's just 40,000 people. It's just 40,000 people in your phone directory, so it shouldn't be so difficult.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, what do you think could be the business model for Liechtenstein to engage in something like this, to engage in space? What do you think, or could you imagine is the point in the future?
I think from a Liechtenstein perspective, I mean, we will never have, a launching site or something like this on our country. I also don't think that there will ever be like a Liechtenstein space program or something like this. Mm-hmm. But I think from an industry perspective and the financial markets perspective, it can be very interesting for the industry sector to be a supplier. I mean, we have really a great industry with a lot of innovation and technology. Sorry. Mm-hmm. And there is already happening a lot of things now. And of course, from the financial market sector, I mean, this is what a huge part of Liechtenstein does. So whether it be investment funds for the space sector or financing space activities in the one or the other way, I think that is something that is very real for Liechtenstein.
Mm-hmm. Bianca, let's have some fun now. We've been having fun so far, but let's have some more fun. I have a question for you. Because you already mentioned that you want to go into space, and you already mentioned at some point that you also have an interest, you had an interest in music. You love music, and now that brings two worlds together right now, because we have a playlist on Spotify that is called the Playlist for the Aspiring Space Traveler. And now the question is, if you were to go to a distant planetary body, it's usually a very long and very boring journey. So my question to you, what one piece of music would you want to bring? What one piece of music would you not want to miss on that journey? And once you tell it to me, I'll put it up on that playlist.
Just one.
Just one.
Well, I think then it would be a Sweet Child of Mine from Guns N' Roses.
I like that. That was quick. That was quick.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite songs. We also play it in my band.
You do have a band?
I think I'm the lead singer in a band. Yes.
That's
the Scoops.
Wow. Is there something online somewhere?
Somewhere.
Okay, the Scoops, Bianca Lins,
Scoops,
guys.
Yeah.
Now it's your turn to look you up. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Question number 2 would be, this place is called the Space Café Podcast. It's a coffee place, and in coffee places, you now and then have an espresso to energize yourself, to get back some energy into your body. Now, why don't you share an espresso for the mind with me? Something that energizes or inspires my mind, the minds of the audiences. And you can pick whatever kind of topic you want to pick. What could be an espresso for the mind?
An espresso for the mind. Well, that's a tough question. Well, for me to energize, actually, it's always music. Well, I have certain songs that, for different moods, actually, yeah. And to, for example, get grounded again. Mm-hmm. If you have had tough week and a lot of meetings and things like this, I really, really love to hear the song from Tim McGraw, mm-hmm. Humble and Kind. Mm-hmm. I love the lyrics, I love the music, and that is something that is always a little bit like an espresso for my mind. Though.
Wow. So I
can highly recommend this song.
Wonderful. But you wouldn't put it on the playlist because it's already taken by Sweet Child of Mine.
Yes, okay. Because I love to sing to Sweet Child of Mine more than to Humble.
Hey, Bianca, that was a fun time. Thank you so much for taking the time.
No, thank you very much. It was really a great talk having with you. Thank you.
As we conclude our journey with Bianca Lins, we're reminded that ambition knows no borders and dreams are not confined by the size of one's homeland. From Austria to Liechtenstein, Bianca's story is a beacon for anyone looking to reach beyond their grasp toward the stars. Thank you, Bianca Lins, for sharing the spirit of Liechtenstein with us, proving that even the smallest places can have the biggest dreams. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this interstellar voyage. Remember, the cosmos isn't just for the giants, it's for every curious soul with a dream. Keep following the Space Café podcast for more stories that inspire, challenge, and remind us of the vast possibilities that lie just beyond our blue sky. Your engagement and curiosity are what makes this journey worthwhile. Keep dreaming big no matter where you are. The universe is vast, and as we've learned today, there's a place in it for all of us. Safe travels through the cosmic seas, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Space Café Podcast. Bye-bye, my friends.